So what we're going to start the next couple of weeks is a series of kind of some one-off standalone work. We've actually got a couple of guest speakers that are going to preach. We've got one from outside, one from inside. We're going to spend a little bit of time just kind of hitting some stuff that maybe doesn't always fit well inside a sermon series, but connects us, and that'll take us clear up until Lent. And so Lent is coming, which means Easter is coming, so pray for your pastor. But no, we're getting closer to that moment. And so be thinking about, as the next couple of weeks, about the things that you either want to let go of or take on as you begin this Lenten journey that will drive you closer and closer to Jesus. Remember, the goal is to know Jesus more tomorrow than you know him today. And that's kind of the beginning of that process. But this week, we're going to be at a passage in Isaiah that parts of might be familiar to you, parts of are pretty easy to quote, but it's an incredibly important passage in the history of the church, going clear back to even like to the Judeo-Christian church, right? So go clear back even into some of our Jewish roots of our faith, that this passage has brought meaning and understanding to some of the most difficult moments of life to our people. We're going to be in Isaiah chapter 40 today. Now, Isaiah chapter 40 is really important. The book of Isaiah is really an essential part of the text. First off, it takes up a huge portion of the Old Testament. It is a long work. This dude had a lot to say, right? And so what he's talking to, though, is a group of people who were in this thing called exile. Now, exile is a very fancy word we don't use a lot today, and it's really not something we're familiar with in Missouri, rural America, where things pretty well go as they go, right? We don't have a lot of like chaos type things. It's one of my favorite things about this, right? I can usually know exactly what things are going to look like for the most part until one of you all throw a monkey wrench in the situation. But like we can make through, right? And so when we don't always understand this concept of exile as a community or as whole, but here's the way this works. So Israel is kind of just doing its own thing. It's ruling itself. Life goes really well until Babylon is on its way to conquer the rest of the Fertile Crescent. And in order to do that, it's got to go through Israel. And so it takes over Israel. And in that moment, then Israel, this little nation that could, kind of loses its ability to self-rule. It loses its ability to self-determination and self-govern. And they begin to then scatter the Jewish people. They take some of them back with them. They leave some of them there. They drop a few along the way. It kind of creates this scattering sensation. And then out of Babylon comes the Persia, and then we end up in Greece and all of the different conquering moments where Israel kind of finds itself separate, kind of conquered and ruled. We see a lot of this tension play out in the New Testament. The understanding of who the Messiah was supposed to be was to come and free Israel from exile, to remove its captors. And so these are people who, within a generation, have watched their right to self-determination be gone. They are afraid. They are angry. They have watched their young men and their warriors be murdered. And they began to do the thing that people do. They began to lament, to cry out, how much longer? Because can we just establish early on that suffering sucks, right? I don't know, can preachers say that? I did. Like, the weight of that moment is terrible. And in the face of that, Isaiah writes his work as a way of reminding the people who they are. And these words are essential because they can be martyred for them. They can be killed for them. There's this systematic desire to remove their religion, which is the thing that binds them together, because if you can scatter them, then you can make them part of the whole. And that becomes really important when you start reading things like Daniel in the lion's den, and the way that they put their thumb on the scales of faith, the powers that be. And in the face of all of that, Isaiah writes Isaiah 40. Now, I wanted to read the whole chapter to you, but I did not want you to fall asleep in church. So we're not going to read the whole thing today. I'm going to read a select amount of verses under the understanding that some point in the next day or so, you will stop and pause and breathe and read Isaiah 40. Because friends, I'm going to tell you, these words matter and they will change the way your day is going. We're going to pick up in verse 21 from the NIV. Do you not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been told to you from the beginning? Have you not understood since the earth was formed that he sits enthroned above the circle of the earth? And his people, they are like grasshoppers. He stretched out the heavens like a canopy, and he spreads them out like a tent to live in. He brings princes to naught, and he reduces the rulers of this world to nothing. No sooner are they planted, no sooner are they sown, no sooner do they take root in the ground than he blows them and they wither. And a whirlwind sweeps them away like chaff. To whom will you compare me? Or who is my equal, says the Holy One. Lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry host one by one and calls forth each by name because of his great power and his mighty strength. Not one of them is missing. Why do you complain, Jacob? Why do you say, Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, my cause is disregarded by my God? Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and in his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases power of the weak. Even youth will grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not grow faint. The living word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. We don't know the story of Exile as a community, but we know it personally. Every one of us has experienced a moment. Some of you may even be experiencing it now. I don't pretend to know your whole lives or what you're going through, but we've all walked moments where it has felt separate, where it has felt distant, where God has felt as though there was this thing between us and we couldn't figure it out, or we have waited for results, or we have waited for answers, or we have waited for something to be different, waited on the world to change. I'm trying really hard to sing that. We have waited for something to break our way. We all know stories and moments where it has seemed like pain and fatigue have weighed us down, where we wake up more tired than when we went to bed, where the stress of just converting oxygen to carbon dioxide seems to be too much. And no, we may not know that story collectively, but we know it individually. Some of us deal with chronic pain that makes it difficult to just move. Depression, fatigue, worry. Just, ugh. And in the face of all of that, we're told in sent messages that happiness is a choice. Just pick it. We're told that we could be better if we just put our mind to it. We're told that everything could be different if we just read enough little Bible verse things that they put on Instagram with pretty backgrounds, and then all of a sudden it's all supposed to be okay. We're told the answer is a clean house or a clean home or an organized life. We're told the answer is in this new app or this new thing that somebody has handed us. We're told that we could take a pill and it'll fix it all. We're told if we just would go sit down and talk to somebody, everything will be fine. We're told that their answer only exists if we would just make a different choice. And in the face of picking, in the face of choosing over and over and over again, for some of us, nothing seems to be different. We live in a world riddled with diseases of despair. Our young people know what it looks like to lose friends and loved ones, to overdose, to suicide. To recklessness and fear. They tell us now that there is not a single family in the United States that has not in some way been affected by the outbreak of depression and diseases of despair and the addiction that is riddling our society. Not a single family. So if you think you're the only one, good news. You're not even close. And in the face of all of that, in the face of that turmoil and that pain, in the face of that exile, it gets easy for us to think God must have forgotten us. What is it says, right? Why do you ask that my way is hidden from the Lord? The way that I'm going, God obviously isn't paying attention. God obviously doesn't see it. I'm hitting my knees and I'm praying over and over and over again. And God obviously isn't listening. I must have the wrong number. I must be texting the wrong helpline. Because I've tried everything else and nothing seems to be breaking. Nothing seems to be changing. Nothing feels different. And it makes me weary. And it makes me lonely. And I'm not sure what to do next. We live in a society of exile. We live in a society that knows these stories, that lives them every day. You are sitting in a room full of people who know these stories and lives them every day. And all that seems to change is every day we're given one more reason to stress. If it's not some geopolitical crisis that we can't affect and we can't fix, it's some local issue that seems to be dividing neighbors and friends and families. And if it's not that, then you've got like in-laws. Every day there seems to be one more reason to worry. How long? I'm getting tired. How long? The psalmist cries that out. How long? How long? How much longer? The ancient prayer of how much longer must this continue before something be different? How long? And all of that fear, the lie, right? The lie that the fear and the enemy tell you in the face of all that, the lie that you get whispered and sold in the face of all that is that you're the only one that feels it. Because that's the secret, right? The secret is that everybody's supposed to pretend like it's not happening. Everybody's supposed to just smile and tell everybody how fine they are. Everything's fine. Everything's great. It's all fine. It's all fine. It's on fire, but it's fine. How are your kids? Terrible. Fine. How's your marriage? I don't even know that person, but it's fine. That's what we're supposed to tell, is how fine everything is, not how truly broken we are or how scared we are or how whatever. And in the face of telling everybody that we're fine, what we know is two things. One, we are lying, and two, we assume everybody else is telling the truth. Do you want to give somebody permission to feel? Tell them you're not actually fine, because in the face of it, you're not just unloading your own self and freeing yourself, you're giving them permission to not be okay too. Because when everybody was running around talking about how fine they are, guess what? Everybody assumes they're the only one that feels this way. See, the lie of the fear is that it's isolating, that you're the only one going through it, that you're the only one that is experiencing it. You're the only one without the mental toughness to be able to withstand all the pressures of the world, and inside we're all screaming for help. How long? It reminds me of a woman who was plagued with an illness. She didn't ask for it. Wasn't something she signed on for. She didn't make a decision for it. It just showed up one day. And in her time, it was an illness of bleeding. In our time, could have been HIV. Could have been COVID a couple of years ago. It could have been a million other things. But in the face of her affliction, she found isolation. In her moments of fear and despair, she was told that she was unclean, unkept, and unwelcome. And that the best thing for her to do was go somewhere else. And even the other people who had been shunned for a different illness, like a leper colony, they wouldn't even let her in. And so she hid, and she wandered, and she kept her head down, hoping no one would notice, no one would speak, no one would interact, because if I can just get through today, if I can just get through the next 5 minutes, if I can just get into the store, get my groceries, and get out without anybody looking at me, anybody talking to me, anybody interacting with me, if I can get through the day without having to smile and pretend like I'm fine one more time, everything will be okay. If I can just fake it for 5 more minutes, then I can let go, then I can pretend, then I can pretend like it's all not okay, but I can't do that now. Because what will they think? What will they say? What will they do? So she wanders through the street, checking off her list, hoping no one notices that she's there. Imagine that. Feeling so alone. Because see, there's a couple of stages of loneliness, right? There's lonely like that moment in middle school when no one's sitting with you at lunch, that you're kind of like trying to look pitiful enough that somebody will take pity on you, even if it's a teacher, so you're not by yourself. Just me? Oh, good. And then there's the second stage of lonely where you just hope no one notices how lonely you are. That you've gotten comfortable in your isolation and you hope no one even tries to take pity on you, because then they might see what a royal train wreck you actually are. That's where she is. She's so lonely she hopes no one even tries to fix it. And while she's walking through the streets, she sees a man. They had told her restored people. Now that's important, because we're just not talking about healing, we're talking about restoration. We're talking about healing and restoration of relationship. We're talking about making people whole. That is the definition of salvation. Salvation is not something that happens one day when you die. Salvation is about wholeness, being made whole by the grace of God. And on a whim, she reaches out and grabs his cloak. And suddenly, the places that were unwelcome are welcome again. In the face of the exile, Jesus offers community. In the face of exile, Jesus offers hope and restoration and peace. Especially when we get too comfortable being lonely. Especially when we get too comfortable being lonely. One of the first, so when you read Genesis, right, you'll go through the list and it says, it is good, 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 good, right, over and over and over again. Do you know one of the first, like, I'm going to say one of the, but I believe it's the first time God says something is not good? It's not good for man to be alone. It's not good for people to be isolated. It's not good for people to be lonely. It's not good for people to not have community. It's not good for people to be so stuck up in their own minds and their own despair and wondering around what's going on and riddled with their own thoughts, because I'm going to tell you what, the dark recesses in the corners of your mind are not healthy places to live. So in the face of exile, Jesus offers community. He offers honesty. He offers witness. In the face of the fatigue, he offers strength and endurance to keep going. Have you not heard? God is an everlasting God. Faithful to generations, even when we're weary of waiting. And so if you sat in spaces like this that get crowded, because it does get crowded in here sometimes. In fact, we'll have no one sitting in the front and 17 people in a pew built for 8 in the back. If you sat in large crowds and feel isolated and lonely, like you're the only one that knows, or you're the only one that's ever gone through it, or you're the only one that's grieving, if you have believed that lie ever, have you not heard God is everlasting and sees you in the face of your own hurt and your own doubt and your own fear? Have you not heard? Now I want to be really clear, lest you think that one sermon on one day is going to change everything. If you roll out of here and you're like, preacher said it's all better, that's another lie. The people Isaiah speaks to spend another generation after generation after generation after generation in exile. It's not all fixed because he put pen to paper. It's not all fixed because a group of people sat down and prayed on one day and said, "You're right, God is with us, it's going to be okay." In fact, listen again, he's not even promising that it's all of a sudden all better. Even youth grow tired and weary, and young men stumble. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not grow faint. It's not a promise that it's all of a sudden going to be better. It's a promise that you can keep going. It's a promise that you can lean into a strength that is all not from you, to keep putting one foot in front of the other and converting oxygen into carbon dioxide even on the days when you don't know what to do next. It's a promise that when you need to get through the next 5 minutes or 5 years or 50 years, the grace of God meets you there. So when you are tired, rest. Jesus took naps on boats. You should too. And be reminded that the strength and the endurance you need does not have to come from you. Because there is real pain and real hurt and real chaos in this thing called life. And through the grace of God, you can be restored. Let us pray. Strengthener, encourager, Holy One, we are in awe at all you do. And we are reminded that in the face of the real hurt and pain of the world, that you see us and you hear us. That while you hold the whole world in the palm of your hand, you also hold us lovingly, like only a father can. And that in the moments when we get so weary, and in the moments when we feel so tired, and then moments when we feel unsure, so unsure, you lift us up on wings like eagles. Thank you for meeting us where we are and lifting us far above the things we never thought we could overcome. Hallelujah and amen.